How true it was when Nietzsche said, "If we climb high enough, we will reach a height from which tragedy ceases to look tragic." Despair is the price one pays for self-awareness. Look deeply into life, and you'll always find despair. Every person must choose how much truth he can stand. Every deep thinker is more afraid of being understood than of being misunderstood. One thing I feel clear about is that it's important not to let your life live you. Otherwise, you end up at 40 feeling you haven't really lived. What have I learned? Perhaps to live now, so that at 50 I won't look back upon my 40s with regret. It is easier, far easier, to obey another than to command oneself. Some cannot loosen their own chains and can nonetheless redeem their friends. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you become new if you had not first become ashes?
If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand or membership card. I'm going to go to a very quick member in the middle. Yes, yeah, let's see. Would you like to... Find the sliding fence that way. Face that way, yes. Okay.
So, Ben, your argument was predicated entirely on Hamas. But thousands of Palestinians, including hundreds of minors and children, are being held hostage by Israel without any charge, with well-documentation of abuses, including sexual abuse, which Israel's own human rights organizations have reported. Hamas did not exist for decades after Israel's creation, and they're not in the West Bank. So, if you're going to be arguing about Hamas, how can we ignore that over 200 Palestinians have been killed, including over 40 children, making it the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank before October 7th? That does not even include the killings happening now, just in 2023. So what justification do you have for that if Israel intends to, quote-unquote, go after Hamas? It's killing many people, especially children, under the justification of Hamas. So what justification do you have of them targeting the West Bank, even if we were to buy anything you said, which honestly I'm questioning?
Sure. So the casualties that have been incurred in the West Bank are prior to October 7th largely. There have been many since October 7th because there have been many conflagrations between the IDF and the Palestinian Authority and Islamic Jihad members in the West Bank. There's significant violence over the course of the early part of this year. There's a breakaway group from the Palestinian Authority. It's called the Lions. The Lions were a small terrorist cell, the Lions Den. They were committing acts of terror in places ranging from Jerusalem to areas of the West Bank. And the IDF was going in and making operational decisions to kill many terrorists in these areas. There are many areas in the West Bank that have been particularly infiltrated by terrorism. That the city of Jenin would be probably the example of the place that has been most infiltrated by terror groups. It's unfortunate, but Hamas is not the only terror group in the region. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is an excellent example of another terrorist group that has wide presence in the West Bank, more so actually than Hamas. There's a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket, obviously, that fell on that Gaza hospital. The entire world then tried to blame on Israel.
I'm allowed to respond, right? Okay. So if your entire argument, once again, is predicated on terror groups, what response do you have about the Great March of Return, which is a very well-documented incident where peacefully Palestinian civilians just marched to their own land that they have a right to go and return to, but they were killed, shot at, and murdered in cold blood?
What year are we talking about? Which group are we talking about? I need more specificity.
I'm talking about the Great March of Return.
I know I'm asking for more specificity because I'm unaware of all the details of what you're speaking about.
So the Great March of Return is a well-documented instance where many Palestinians, after a tweet by a Palestinian, encouraged other Palestinians to go march peacefully back to their land.
Which land is theirs? What are we talking about?
We're talking about occupied Palestine.
Are you talking about in proper Israel? Where are we talking about? Like which areas?
We're talking about on the borders of Palestine, and we're also talking about their right to return to Palestine.
There is no right to return. If you're talking about in Palestine, if you're talking about the land that is inside the 67 borders, there is no right of return to Haifa. There's no right of return to Tel Aviv. There's no right of return to West Jerusalem.
So you have to remember that there are many, many, many elders who are older than the state of Israel. You have to remember that Palestine is not a Muslim land. You are equating this to a religious conflict. It's not. When Palestine, before it was occupied, you had Jews, Christians, and Muslims peacefully coexisting. Palestine is not a Muslim homeland. It's a land that existed where many people that are alive to this day are older than the state of Israel.
So are you making the argument that any population of any time, all of their descendants now have a right to go back to the place that their great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers went?
Not great-great-great-grandfather. We have grandmothers.
Okay, grandmothers, grandfathers. Is that the idea that you can walk across the lines of any sovereign state and simply claim the place that you said that you had, even though you never established property rights, and say the Jordanian West Bank, or you abandon this place in Haifa? So your claim is that right now people get to walk across the border of a sovereign nation and simply set up shop in Haifa? This is your claim?
So even if you were to buy what you're saying, which is obviously not true, I encourage you to Google about the Great March of Return, which was a peaceful resistance against a wrongful occupation of Palestine. Even if you were to buy what you were
Can you just define wrongful occupation? Which part of Palestine is occupied?
You're not answering my question.
I mean, I'd like you to answer mine.
Terror groups. I gave you an example of peaceful resistance.
Yes.
I'll give you an example where people were wrongfully shot at, including children, and you still can't answer about why that's justified.
So, if again,
You keep talking about Hamas and terror groups, and you gave examples of other terror groups, even though I gave you examples of civilians who marched and were shot at. But even now, a few days ago, you had Palestinian people living in Israel proper, which is occupied Palestine, who are being shot at by farmers in their gardens and in their farms. And those people are being able to get away with shooting them with total impunity. So why is it that
that's not true. Many of those people have been arrested. They're all currently sitting in Israeli jail.
the settler that just shot at a Palestinian
Have been
farmer
arrested.
was not arrested? I encourage you to look into this.
I did look into this morning. And can I please get one answer before you leave? Because this is an interesting conversation. Which part of Israel is occupied Palestine?
All of Israel?
There we go. There we go. There we go. So what you're calling for is the obliteration of the state of Israel, and all of this is just a cover for that. I appreciate your time.
I'd now like to go recording Trevor.
Thank you, and may I first say thank you for coming to speak at the Oxford that you did this evening. It's a real pleasure. I'm a theology student myself, and I was wondering, how do you reconcile your conservative political views?
Say, into the microphone.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile your conservative political views with the religious values of compassion and your own Jewish faith? And your stance on the Israeli-Palestine war?
I don't see why it's uncompassionate to call for the overthrow of Hamas, a terrorist group in the Gaza Strip, which has been oppressing its people and stealing billions of dollars from its own people. Ismail Haniyeh is living in a 5-star hotel in Qatar, while his people are living in absolute misery because of a war that he initiated by killing 1,500 people inside Israel proper and then taking 233 hostages. I don't see why that's non-compassionate. It seems to me that compassion also requires that you obliterate terrorist threats to your own population.
Thank you. I'll go to the member in the corner here.
Can you all hear me? All right, what about now? Sorry, what again? Okay, I'll speak up. I'll try my best. Hello, Ben. It's good to see you. I've been watching you since 2015. You started my conservative journey, and here we are. I saw, unfortunately, you had to bring some pretty gruesome photos, and I have to say I hope those photos aren't real, and I have my doubts because recently you posted an AI-generated image of a charred infant corpse.
No, I didn't. That is a lie. That is untrue. It was not an AI photo. It was not an AI photo. It was distributed by the Israeli government and the Prime Minister of Israel. It was verified by the United States government. That fake community note that said that it was an AI-generated photo was, in fact, taken down by Twitter because it was a fake community note. That is unfortunately not an AI-generated photo. I wish it were. It was a baby obliterated beyond recognition because it had been burned to death.
So is it the word of the IDF in Israel versus the word of
No,
ex-fact-checkers?
it's the photo. It's the actual camera footage taken by GoPro cameras by Hamas terrorists as they invaded Israel proper. I don't have to take Israel's word for it. A lot of this stuff was live streamed.
So to what extent, as you're posting to social media, are you willing to make sure the information you're posting is accurate, to not exchange the truth for giving aid to Israel?
I'm certainly doing my damn best. And there's a lot of information flowing around. I'm doing my best. On that one, for sure, 100%. It is a lie that is an AI-generated photo. That is not true in any way, shape, or form. And it shows how it does show how we live in a very dangerous era where anybody can. I mean, this is happening on a routine basis. You're seeing, for example, some of the pictures. They're horrible pictures coming out from Gaza, and a huge number of those are, of course, absolutely real. You're also seeing people who are repurposing pictures that are taken from Syria and then saying those are happening in Gaza. So, yeah, unfortunately, there is a lot of information that's floating around that is hard to kind of lock down and verify. That picture is 100% real, unfortunately.
I sympathize with you because as AI gets more advanced, it becomes increasingly hard to discern information. So I know you bear a lot of
I mean, this is going to be a serious problem as time goes on. Seriously, like the flow of information is going to be more and more uncertain because of that. That I agree with on a general level.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Let's go to the member in the back. Yes. Sorry, it was the member behind you. It was the member at the very back. Yep. I'll come to you after.
Hi. If Israel is justified in killing civilians because of the acts of terror committed by Hamas, why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did? Because Israel is keeping 13,000 children. It has tried them in military courts. Since the establishment of Israel, 55,000 Palestinian homes have been bulldozed. So why isn't Hamas justified in doing what it did if we use your logic?
So I'm going to answer your question, then I'm going to ask you a question if you don't mind. Is that all right? So so my answer is that Israel would not be justified in killing Palestinian civilians because of the actions of terrorists. Israel would be justified in attempting to kill terrorists, and civilian casualties are a cost of war. That is just a reality of life. During World War II, there were 70,000 Brits who died during the Blitz bombing, and there were 2 million Germans who died, civilians who died during World War II. And I don't see a lot of monuments in Britain because of the 2 million civilians who died in Germany. The costs of war are brutal. They're terrible. They're horrifying. There's a vast difference in moral scope between deliberately going into a civilian area and murdering everyone you can find and trying to kill a terrorist who is deliberately hiding beneath a civilian area, hiding their rockets in civilian areas, starving their own people. There is a vast difference. Okay, so now I get to ask my question, if you don't mind. So my question is, do you believe that there is a moral difference between Hamas going into, for example, Kfar Aza and murdering entire families, and Israel attempting to target terrorists and accidentally hitting civilians?
Israel is effectively doing the same because Gaza is the most densely populated region in the world. There are 15,000 people per square mile.
So does Hamas get
Over
immunity
half of
because
the
they're there? So
population's
Hamas gets
children.
immunity. So
Israel has killed 3,500 children in the past 3 weeks. That's more children. That's more children than have died in conflicts around the world in each of the last 4 years.
So just to be clear, your logic is that if you're a terrorist group located in a densely populated community and you hide behind civilians, you're now immune.
Where are the children meant to go?
So you're immune. Okay. That's
Where
a
are they
violation of
meant
the
to go?
Geneva Conventions, but okay. You're now immune. Your logic is that if you're a Hamas terrorist...
Since 2005, 23 out of every 24 conflict deaths have been Palestinian. I don't see any moral equivalency there. It's clearly unjust what the IDF has been doing to the Palestinians because there's a vast disparity between the number of Palestinians being killed and the number of Israelis.
I mean, I would certainly hope that Israel is killing more Hamas
This isn't
members.
a conflict. This isn't a conflict. This is one-sided ethnic cleansing.
So, again, I'm just asking you, if based on the numbers, more Germans died than Brits in World War II, did that mean that the British were wrong in World War II? Because they did. Many more Germans died than Brits. Based on the numbers, does that mean that Britain was wrong in World War II?
Britain wasn't bombing civilians. There's a clear difference.
You should talk to the people in Dresden, but you can't because they're dead.
There's a clear difference. I agree that war is horrible, but this is not a just war. What Israel is doing is not a just war. There is a difference between fighting the Nazis.
So it is not a just war.
Fighting the Nazis.
It is not a just war when you fight a war against people who murder 1,500 of your civilians and take 233 of them, at last count, captive into tunnels. It is not a just war to obliterate them. Please name a just war.
Israel's been killing civilians for the past 75 years, and there was no headlines about it, and nobody said that the Palestinians were
Israel
justified
does not purposefully kill
retaliating.
civilians. Palestinian terrorists do.
Israel has not purposefully killed civilians. Are you willing to stand by that statement?
If Israel put down its guns tomorrow, there would be a second Holocaust. If the Palestinians put down their guns tomorrow, there would be a Palestinian state. That is the reality. And let me ask you this.
There would not be a Palestinian settlement.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you. I'm just going to ask you the last question. The same question I asked her. Which part of Palestine is occupied?
The entirety of Palestine. But
there we go.
I'm not
Thank you
calling
once
for
again.
the destruction of Jews.
I appreciate you expressing your full genocidal intent for the Jewish people living between the river.
Why is it genocidal to call for a state that is not apartheid? You can have a state where all citizens have equal rights, Jews and Muslims.
I'm sure that's going to go amazingly under the same people who are governing the Gaza Strip, where currently zero Jews live.
In the time, can we move on to the next question, please? Let's go to, I think the member in the green jumper. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought it was green. Yeah. Yep. Theology. Guys,
Ben, it's an absolute displeasure to see me standing. Well, it's absolute. I will get to my question, however.
Thank you for coming anyway.
My displeasure. Now, I'll repeat the question that I sought to ask you. You have recently been discussing a lot about the history of the occupation of Palestine. I will call it that. I know you will oppose that, but I will call it that. The occupation of Palestine.
The whole thing, right? Just to be clear?
The entirety of Palestine.
Thank you.
You may accuse me of genocide if you wish. That is not my position.
Sure. And I will, but go ahead.
Anyway, so the point about the occupation of Palestine, you have released multiple videos. You have essentially made yourself the cheerleader of Israel in a lot of sort of Western media spaces. So I watched some of your videos about the conflict, and I found a number of inaccuracies. First of all, you describe in 1920, you refer to Jordan as part of Palestine historically. That has never been the case. There has never been a state of Jordan.
British Mandate Palestine, yes.
That is still not the case. Jordan has never been part or considered part of Palestine. The only time that Jordan has been considered adjacent to Palestine is part of sort of biblical mythology where Transjordan was a reason.
That's wildly inaccurate. The British Mandate had a mandate over all of Palestine, and then they separated off Transjordan and handed it to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
You will get your chance to reply. Let me finish. Now, the second point that you have phrased constantly and consistently, and it's quite a popular Zionist talking point, is the fact that the Arabs have rejected peace every time it was offered to them. Now, I would like, of course, there's been multiple times where peace has been offered, so let's discuss some of them. The Peel Commission. The Peel Commission entailed expelling multiple Arab families and multiple Arab communities, largely agrarian, from the land in order to create a Jewish state under a colonial authority. Now, I understand, of course, you are a Zionist, so you believe that's desirable. But for the Palestinian farmers, I can imagine they would not have enjoyed that. Number two, you mentioned that that after 1948, the Arabs had the chance to negotiate and make peace with Israel. Apart from the fact that in 1956, Israel invaded the Sinai in Egypt, unprovoked, purely due to the fact that President Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. Then you claim that the 1967 war was a war of extermination. But if you will read any trusted and respected historian over the 1967 war, and perhaps you may even decide to read some of the books of Moshe Dayan about the actual conflict, where he describes that Israel actually provoked the conflict and there was no chance of the extermination of Israel. Then you claim that the 1973 war was a war of the destruction of Israel once again, which it was not. It was actually the reclaiming of the Sinai and the Golan Heights, which Israel has illegally occupied. So, You have lied multiple times. I can continue if you would wish, but I would like to ask you the question. When you lie, do you feel shame?
Okay, so in order for me to feel shame, I would have to be lying as opposed to you just being wrong about all of these things which you are. So let me start from the very beginning of what you said. Let's try to go through the calendar. British Mandate Palestine was ruled by the British. They carved off Transjordan in 1920, and Transjordan was made into Transjordan with the Hashemite kingdom, which, by the way, is not domestic to the actual area of Jordan. So if you're talking about a colonial outpost, Jordan would be it, since the Hashemite kingdom has nothing to do with the actual Palestinian Arabs who are living in Transjordan. Talking about the Peel Commission. If the idea is that there would have to be a separation of populations in order to effectuate a two-state solution, which you deny, then I was right. Of course there was a deal on the table. The Jews accepted it. The Arabs rejected it. So you did not actually undermine my case.
In his
there should be no deal in the first place.
In his diary states.
Hold on. I listened to your whole bullshit history for like 5 minutes here. So at least let me respond to it. Your entire claim is that the Arabs did not reject peace, and then in your own disquisition, you admitted that the Arabs rejected the Peel Commission plan, which was a separation between the Jews and the Arabs, which gave an extraordinary amount of land to the Arabs. The Arabs then rejected the peace partition plan proposed by the United Nations in 1947. They then proceeded to reject the Oslo Accords in 93. After that, they rejected the Wye River Accords in 98. They rejected Ehud Barak's very generous offer in 2000. They rejected Olmert's very generous offer in 2008. Every single peace deal that has been proposed by Israel or anyone else has been rejected by the Arabs for a very simple reason, which was the very first question I asked you. You do not accept that there should be a Jewish state anywhere in this region. So as long as that's the case, there's literally nothing to argue about. You cannot simultaneously maintain the position there should not be a Jewish state anywhere in the region and then tell me that I'm wrong when I say that the Arabs will not accept a two-state solution. You yourself say that there should not be a two-state solution.
So the first point I'll firstly address the last point that you made about the Palestine and whether there should be a Jewish state. The point you are making there is you're suggesting that the Arabs will not accept a Jewish state. Palestine and whether there should be a Jewish state. The point you are making there is you're suggesting that the Arabs will not accept a Jewish state. Well, the reason that the Arabs would not accept the Jewish state is multifaceted.
It's complex.
Let me finish. So, the reason that it's multifaceted is due to a variety of dynamics. The Zionist movement arrived as a settler colonial project, and it is described as that. You can read the books of Jablonski. You can read Zionist literature from the early 20th century. It states that it was a colonial project. Now let's address the lies that you mentioned. Let's address the refutation that you made. In 1937, the Peel Commission, if you read the diaries of David Ben-Gurion, he explicitly states that the partition was a temporary move to ensure the conquest of the full land. In 1948, there had already been an intercommunal civil war in Palestine, which had seen Jewish defense forces versus the Arab forces. There was already a conflict that preceded 1948. To claim that the Arabs simply rejected the UN partition plan is once again ahistorical. You then make...
They literally rejected it. How could it be ahistorical if they literally rejected it?
If there was a war beforehand...
And once again, you just reject fundamentally the existence of the State of Israel, period. So how can...
to interrupt you, I was told to silence. So I would ask you again, please shut up. My point now, I would like to continue, and you then mention the what was the peace plan you mentioned after?
Okay, which one should we do? Should we do the?
We finished 1948. What after?
Okay, so there was the 2000 peace plan from Ehud Barak. There's the 2008 peace plan from Ehud Olmert. There's the pullout of Israel from Gaza Strip in 2005, handing it over to Hamas.
Let's get the next person up now.
All right. Thank you very much.
One final note, there can be no two-state solution when literally you will not accept the possibility of a two-state solution. That is the end of the story. There is no further discussion.
Let's do the ex-president on the front bench.
Thank you, Ben. I'm not going to ask any questions about Israel-Palestine, but I wanted to ask something about what you touched on in your opening remarks. You said that the reason you feel called to speak out, one of the reasons you feel called to speak out about what's going on in Gaza at the moment, is that you think that it is a question about the West standing up for its values and asserting its identity and knowing what it is. I put to you that perhaps the reason that that is so controversial, and you saw 100,000 people marching in London on Saturday before that, etc., is that the West, or many countries in the West, no longer have a sort of common sense of what they are as nation-states and therefore what they should stand for. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
What do you think the consequences of that are?
I mean, I think the consequence of that is dissolution of the West. I mean, if the West is not going to be muscular in defense of whatever it believes its core values to be, then of course it's going to be overtaken by alternative sets of values.
Is it the replacement of the West if it just adopts a new value code?
Yes. I mean, if the West is to mean anything other than a location, it's going to have to mean a set of values. And those values traditionally in Britain have meant things like classical liberalism. They've meant things like freedom of religious worship. These are all aspects of the now Anglo-American system that have been adopted across the pond as well. And when those values fall away, what you end up with is a morally relativistic state that cannot stand up for its own values and has no reason to continue.
So do you think that collapse of a communal moral code is now inevitable?
Not at all. I don't. In fact, I think that there is going to be quite a backlash to the insane self-blinding that has taken place by the West. This belief that everybody is at root thinking the same sorts of thing and engaging in the same sort of incentive structure. I do not think that that is the case. I don't think the West always believed that. This is not to say the West is perfect, that the West hasn't made enormous and horrifying mistakes. The West certainly has. But the West value system is certainly better than the other value systems that have been made available to the planet over the course of the last couple of centuries.
I'm sure you'd agree with me in that the foundation of a lot of the moral code of the West is sort of Judeo-Christian. Do you think that mass secularization post the Second World War, at least in the United Kingdom, it's been much more delayed in the United States?
Yes. I mean, I think that the religious Judeo-Christian values that have been brought into the secular world by a diverse society, and then sort of secularized in terms of the way they've been embedded in our laws. Yes, I mean, I think a lot of the Enlightenment values that originally had their roots in Judeo-Christian culture, I think those are beginning to wear away. I think that we're suffering from what one author called the cut flower syndrome, that if the idea is that Judeo-Christian values have to undergird a system of Western liberalism where there has to be a common agreement in terms of the things that we hold dear and the kind of good that we hold as the highest good, in order for there to be room to stick and move within that good and toleration of minorities and the marginalized within that same framework. It has to be an agreed-upon framework. When you cut that off from its fundamental religious roots, it's very difficult for the flowers to survive. They can survive for a little while in water, but eventually they wither.
So if you don't think... Can I have one more question very quickly?
Fine.
Thank you. If you don't think, then, that the loss of a common moral code is inevitable, do you therefore think you'll see massive, rapid desecularization of the West?
I think that you will see that. I do think that you're going to see people seeking community. I think that we've seen extraordinary isolation of people, atomization of people. This is particularly true during COVID. And I think people are seeking a sense of community. I think, unfortunately, many people are seeking community in political movements, which is quite dangerous. Atomized individuals tend to band together in revolutionary movements. But I think the substitute for that would be to re-engage with a lot of the local and important institutions that used to provide the foundation for a happy life for people. And those traditionally were family, church, synagogue, mosque. I mean, those would be the things that people engage in.
Thank you.
Let's go to the men. So it's on the member to the right. Yep. Yep.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. And
Thank you very much for being here. I wanted to ask you a question about the American political climate. So your analysis of the previous two American presidential elections and your forecast for the upcoming 2024 election is that the candidate against whom the election is a referendum will lose. Do you think this is an inevitable consequence of America's two-party political system, or just a recent trend caused by the nature of candidates offered to the American electorate?
No, I think it's probably an inevitable consequence of a two-party trend. I think it's very difficult to think of a presidential election that was a positive referendum on the candidate. Probably the last one in America was 2008, where people positively voted for Barack Obama because they thought of him as a transformative figure. But that's a rarity. The usual nature of politics is sort of negative in orientation. And so I don't think there's anything unnatural about that. My only call has been that both parties should nominate somebody who's sane. The first party to rationality in the United States is likely to win. Unfortunately, we have on the one hand a geriatric doctrine, and on the other hand, we have Donald Trump. So it's, the American people chooses its own candidates. And, as H.L. Mencken said, democracy is the theory that you ought to get what you deserve. The American people are about to get what they deserve, good and hard. So that is what it is.
So on that note, do you think that the states would benefit from a stronger third party like we have in the UK or in Canada, for example?
I don't think that the system lends itself to it very well because, again, it's not a parliamentary democracy. I mean, the idea in the United States is very much built around this sort of binary two-party system. It's very difficult for a third party to make serious inroads. What we have seen over the past few years, it's a lot easier to take over one of the major parties. Right? Trump effectively took over the Republican Party from the inside and changed it around himself. And you can see something similar that could easily happen inside the Democratic Party. Actually, Bernie Sanders has been quite successful at moving the Democratic Party significantly further to the left than it was even 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, what are you doing?
See if they say these things are flammable.
So, Doritos are flammable?
I don't know. That's what they say.
Your hand's on the way.
Oh, yeah? Well,
Holy crap!
freaking flammable.
Well, now the bag's gonna...
Holy cow. Oh, did I put it out? Let's see if it keeps going.
So it's saying if you...
Just put it like this and put the twigs on top.
So you start a fire with Doritos.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Is that not crazy?
Oh my
and
gosh.
I eat this shit all the time?
Yes.
That is nuts.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that. Unbelievable.
Okay, what are you doing?
About the China-Taiwan situation. It is very real and going to get even more real and scary soon. So the next thing to think about, so coming back to that statement, novices argue tactics, professionals plan logistics. There are very few months in the year that an invasion works for Taiwan because of the wind and the sea state. I checked today before I came here, and the wind was blowing 30 knots through the Taiwan Straits. Not a good day. Not a good day for the PLA. So there's very small weather windows where, right? Because what is it? An amphibious invasion or an airborne strike are really hard to do. You have 100 miles of open ocean between mainland and Taiwan, in a untested military, where if Xi decides to go for it, he is throwing down. That is he's literally putting his life on the line, because if they fail, kind of like Putin riding that tiger, if Xi goes down that road to start that kind of contest, there's only one way. He's got to win and win it all, or it's toast. So the next thing to think about is there's an election in January of 2024. So in 4 months for the presidency. The existing party that's in power now is from the DPP, the Democratic People's Party, and the Kuomintang, which is the party that's largely dominated politics in Taiwan since Chiang Kai-shek, who was defeated by the Chinese communists and fled there in 1949 to the island of Formosa. Now it's Taiwan. The KMT is seen as the very pro-Beijing party. Traditionally, that contest. The DPP candidate has said he was pro-independence before. The danger of him being elected is if he says something, and the Chinese just in the last 6 months have recast their law so that even the refusal of an invitation to reunite with the mainland is enough provocation for the Chinese to invade. So they've said that. Kyle Bass, a money manager from Texas, did a fantastic video at the at the Hudson Institute.
Did you know that if you were born between the years 1972 and 2011, that your social security number is not random? So as most of you hopefully know, your social security is a 9-digit number. The last 4 digits are random, but the first 5 are not. The first 3 digits are what state you're born in, and then the next 2 numbers are what area in that state you're born in. They did away with this process in 2011 because they realized that eventually certain states are gonna run out of social security numbers. Not to mention, it's a little creepy that you could get someone's social security number and in certain cases pinpoint the exact location they were born. So now it's done by randomization.
Stop putting everything in your name, create a business, an LLC, put everything in your LLC. And open up a C Corp, and if you don't know this, you need to figure these out. I'm telling you the names. Get a C Corp to run an LLC. If you want to make it even deeper, go get a trust fund and run a corp that runs the LLC. You want to get even deeper, own 2 trust funds for your business and your person to run that trust that runs all the business. It can get deep, my guy.
Absolutely.
And Donald Trump actually showed me that method. That's how he didn't pay tax.
So this is my business trust. And then I have another trust, which is my family trust here. And this family trust basically does everything, okay? The business trust is a member of my LLC, where I'm a member. This is me, Brandon. I'm a 5% member in my LLC, whereas my business trust owns 95% of the LLC. So why do I set it up that way? Well, because my business is profitable, right? Me, Brandon Clark, the person, is responsible for 5% of the taxes that this business makes as an individual person, whereas the business is 95% responsible for those taxes. So if we put numbers to it, if I had $100,000 of income that would be taxed, then I would be responsible for $5,000, and I would have to pay taxes on that, whereas the trust would have to pay taxes on $95,000. I'm responsible, right? And so my CPA is looking at this right now and say, man, why would you have a structure inside of a trust? Because trusts pay higher taxes than everybody. Trusts pay about 36-37% taxes, right? And so that's where the strategy comes in, because what you could do from this point is you could actually transfer or donate the full $95,000 to the beneficiary of this trust. Right, so there's 3 entities to a trust, right? You have the grantor or the creator. That's the person who creates the trust. Then you have your trustee. This is the person who has all the power. And then you have the beneficiary. So they have no power. So the grantor or the creator, if we're talking about an irrevocable trust, there's a difference between an irrevocable trust and a revocable trust, or also known as a living trust. The grantor is the person who has the power and is giving away the power to the trustee. And so why would anybody do that? I don't even want to go into all the details, but there's a lot of reasons. Plus, this is recorded. But anyway, to make a long story short, this $95,000, I would owe 36 to 37% of taxes on that amount. But because trusts are these special entities, they can do something that we as people can't do. They can do things that S Corps can't do, C Corps can't do, LLCs can't even do this. Trusts have the ability, the unique ability, to transfer or donate 100% of their gross profits, gross revenue. So I essentially could take this $95,000 and donate it to my family trust. Bam. So now I got $95,000 in my family trust, and we got our trustee, and then we have the beneficiary. And I kind of skipped ahead of myself. The beneficiary of my business trust is the family trust. Guess who the trustee is here, though? That's me. I'm the trustee. Guess who the trustee is here for the family trust? That's me. The beneficiary is my kids. And what do my kids need? A bunch of stuff. If y'all got kids, y'all know y'all kids need a bunch of stuff, right? So now I get to pass that pass that income through all of my entities without paying taxes, and I can basically spend that money on the beneficiaries, which are my kids. And so this is the protection piece here. And so the trust can own things like automobiles, it can own property, it can literally own anything that you want it to own. And so what I have is 5 insurance policies. I have a policy, Jennifer has a policy, Bryant has a policy, Belle has a policy, and then my other daughter, Janae, has a policy. And so this trust owns each policy. And I could actually use the money that I receive or income that I receive into the trust, and I could use it to fund these policies.
I'm going to open up insurance.
I can actually fund all of them with the same money by using the strategy that I showed you earlier, where you take out a loan.
Put $2-3 million in my insurance and borrow from that and put it back in.
Against your own cash. All right, so I can pay premium in one policy, take out a loan, and fund another policy. And because I got all these over at the same company, so I can do that. All right. And is there some questions in there? I saw like a question. I'm gonna answer like 2 more questions and then I gotta head out. Yep. You don't pay any taxes. Hold on, wait. Is the money that's passed on from your life insurance policy subject to tax or not? What is the purpose of putting into the trust? So 2 purposes. The trust is protection. It's really protection from the taxes and then protection from like lawsuits and stuff. Anytime you guys start, if you have like high risk businesses like trucking, like you own trucks, things like that, and you own a business, that kind of puts a target on your back for people to sue you. And if you have an LLC and only a LLC, you could be in trouble. Why could you be in trouble? Well, let's think about it. What does LLC stand for? Limited what? Limited liability company or corporation, something like that. Whatever, right? So let's say if somebody wanted to come sue me, let's say if I like hit somebody in a terrible accident, they could sue me, the person Brandon, but they couldn't sue my LLC or my company, right? Now on the flip side of that, let's say I own the truck, or not I own the truck, the business owned the truck. And let's say the business hit somebody and killed a bunch of people. Well, naturally a lawsuit will follow the LLC. Let's say a judge decides to, after they levy all the assets that the business owns, they could actually do what they call pierce the corporate veil, right? And they could come after my personal assets, which is why you don't want to have anything in your name for a protection standpoint. So essentially, let's say if somebody were to sue the LLC and they pierce the corporate veil, they'll see that I own it, but I don't own nothing in my name. And then they'll see this business trust. Now, because this business trust is an irrevocable trust, they can't pierce that, right? They can't pierce it, but it's like highly unlikely, and it costs a lot of money. And a good attorney, if they saw an irrevocable trust like that, would say, look, it's gonna cost a lot of money and ain't even no guarantee that this trust has any assets. So it's literally like, we got this trust, but we don't know if it has any assets, right? So that's why you have another trust behind it, because all this money as it comes in, or all these assets are gonna be layered. And so now I'm protecting myself here, or you will be protecting yourself there and there. And also life insurance policies are litigation proof in most states. Most states. Meaning if you have money in an insurance contract like that, even if they do sue you, they can't get the money in the policy, right? So it's pretty cool, pretty unique way of being able to protect yourself, generational wealth, probate, taxes. That's really the main thing. You want to protect yourself from taxes. All right, but yeah, I want to appreciate y'all for coming through.
Idea that we're actually flirting with a nuclear conflict with Russia is the most important priority in the history of humanity, is that America and Russia do not go to war. There's nothing more important than that. That's it. We'll destroy the human species if we do this. And yet there's this war right on Russia's border, and there's no effort to negotiate going on. There's like no effort. In fact, from very solid reporting, that actually America, through Boris Johnson, told Ukraine not to negotiate with Russia at the very beginning of the war, when they had a deal worked out. They had a deal worked out. This has been reported in multiple sources that they had a deal worked out, and the deal was basically that Vladimir Putin would pull back. He would pull back his troops and leave Ukraine under the condition that the very simple conditions that Ukraine guaranteed autonomy for the Donbass region and agreed to never join NATO. And like that was a deal. Like, okay, I'm not saying everyone thinks that's the perfect deal, but it's better than what we got right now. It's
better than nuclear war.
And right now, just the other day, dude, the official narrative on this whole war, it's just like it makes no sense. And again, like I said, remember, the same people who are pushing this are the ones who are telling you Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and stuff. But the official narrative, Joe, is basically that, Vladimir Putin is a madman, a crazy war criminal who's hell-bent on reforming the Soviet Union, and this is a real threat that he could do this. But also, he's getting humiliated in this war in Ukraine. It's like he's losing to the poorest country in Europe, and he's just getting humiliated and beat back. But he's still a real threat to take over all of Europe. And he's a complete madman, by the way, Joe. But when he says he's going to use nuclear weapons, don't listen to that. He'd never actually do that, even though he's a complete madman. And as everyone says, this war, the word they use over and over and over again, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, all of them, unprovoked. Vladimir Putin led an unprovoked war in Ukraine. But then, it's just like with Osama bin Laden, what they did with him then. Don't listen to him. Whatever you do, don't listen to what he's actually saying, because none of that's his motivations. Like, what his motivations are what we tell you. Osama bin Laden hates us because we're free. And then, like, Ron Paul would just go like, yeah, but that's not what he's saying at all.
What is something you found out late in life that you should have known earlier, but you just...
So if you guys were to take a look at the bottom of a soda can, right, you see it has this extra little circular ridge here. Now, obviously you need soda cans to have circular bottoms because it keeps the carbonation and the pressure how it is so that the soda can taste so good. However, when soda cans were created in 1958, they didn't look like this. You want to know why? Because these sodas are multi-purposeful, meaning that you can stack one on top of the other and use it to open the other soda, right? There's not a coincidence why they all stack so perfectly on top of each other. You can use a soda to open another soda, meaning if you just got your nails done, you don't want to mess them up, or it hurts your fingers to try to open them by themselves, just take a soda, put it on top, and open it with another soda. Try it out.
It's okay, baby.
Mr. Kissinger, what are you going to be doing at Bilderberg this year in Switzerland?
What am I going to do in
Bilderberg, yeah, in Switzerland this year.
do at Bilderberg?
What happens there?
Well, a discussion of various topics.
Mr. Kissinger, we're going to go this way.
Your insight gives a lot to think about. Thank you so much, Dr.
That's good.
Kissinger.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Can you expand on your quote when you said military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns for foreign policy?
I never said that.
Bob Woodward said you said that.
Bob Woodward never tells.
Nancy, which way do you want
He's the guy who covered Watergate. He's a trusted journalist.
Sweetheart, it doesn't.
You never said that? Your greatest accomplishments have caused a lot of human suffering.
Please, sir.
Do you have any regret or remorse for the human suffering, Mr. Kissinger, that you caused millions of people in Chile and Argentina and East Timor? Mr. Kissinger, I know you're not going to respond, but I don't want your New World Order, and you won't have one, Mr. Kissinger. National sovereignty will prevail, freedom will reign, nation states will survive, sir, and you will not have your New World Order, your eugenics, because we are changed and we are taking this generation back, sir.
America is going to be the poorest country in the world starting now. You're going to see the biggest crashes happening right now. So that's good for me because the price of gold and silver go up. So this time I went to the slums of Mumbai. What shocks most people is America never had slums like that. Today, slums are everywhere across America. The slums of Mumbai are spreading across America. So the big shift, it's Russia, China versus America, Europe. The Chinese are threatening to shift the yuan to gold. And if they do that, US dollar collapses. If that happens, America goes. So that's why I've been saying this is trash. It's commodities. silver and gold. So being a capitalist, I own gold mines and I own silver mines. So when the dollar crashes, I get richer.
And that happens time and time again.
That's going to happen now. It's the biggest battle in history going on today. And the dollar is going to lose.
1 minute prayer for breaking curses. If you believe in the power of prayer,
The worst states to be during a nuclear war. First on the list is New Jersey. This densely populated state lies in close proximity to major areas like New York City and Philly. Its strategic location makes it a prime target. Make sure you stay until the end for some of the safest states as well. Maryland is next, home to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and several military installations. It's a potential bullseye for attackers seeking to cripple the U.S. government. Delaware, I honestly forgot it was a state. Although small in size, hosts key military assets, and it is located near major cities, making it a high priority target. Some of the reasons that these states have made it on this list is because high population density, military presence, and strategic importance, making them least safe places to be in. But if you want to survive, consider owning land in these states like Wyoming, Idaho, Nebraska, and Michigan. These remote and less densely populated areas could be your ultimate place to have land in if a situation like this was to go down. And having a place that's secluded in these uncertain times will save you. Save this for future use and share it with somebody so they can best prepare. The worst states to be during a nuclear war.